KUTV Kenya, on Twitter at KUTV_. Remember to use the hashtag Primetime News. Now, we begin our story here in Nairobi. Raila Odinga has jetted back in the country after a week-long visit in Dubai. Odinga was accorded a grand-style welcome by Azimio leaders and his followers who were camped at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport waiting for his arrival. The opposition leader later proceeded to Kunji ground in Kibra, where he clarifies on the resumption of Azimio, mass action on Tuesday next week.
On arrival at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport after 1 week stay tour in Dubai, opposition leader Raila Odinga was received with joy from his fellow Azimio leaders and his followers. Odinga later proceeded to Kamukoji grounds in Kibra constituency, where he addressed his followers and assured them that the Azimio protest will resume on Tuesday next week. He further clarifying that it was the early celebrations of Easter and Ramadan that made him to suspend the protest, but not President Ruto call on bipartisan talks.
Kesho ni Jumamosi, kesho kutwa ni Jumapili, mtondo itakuwa ni Jumatatu, siku ya Labor Day. Sasa sisi wafanyikazi, mtondo go, siku ya Jumanne, Tuesday, tarehe 2 mwezi wa 5 tunarudi uwanjani.
Odinga has emphasized that the members of Parliament David Kosin and Aidan Kenan, whose inclusion in the bipartisan talks as out in the bipartisan process, are still Azimio affiliates, since the parties are in a coalition agreement with Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition.
Hawajaomba hata kama hiyo chama kama inatoka, Bwana Posing hakuna haki ya kubaki ndani ya Azimio. Tumeelewana sawa sawa? Kwa hivyo tumesema Bwana Posing atabaki ndani ya delegation yetu ya Azimio.
The opposition leader went on to rebuke the Shakahola deaths caused by the controversial preacher Paul Mackenzie, asking the government to investigate and arraign everyone connected to the Pastor Mackenzie occultic issue. He further warned the government against blocking the media coverage, saying that by doing so, they are denying them their rights.
Ile uchunguzi ambao unafanywa kule Shakahola haiwezi kufanyika kama hakuna waandishi wa habari. Hatutaki wazuie waandishi wa habari kwenda huko. Manake sasa wamefukua maiti zaidi ya 100 ambao wanafukuliwa kule. Hii ni masaka ambayo inaonekana katika historia ya nchi yetu.
As Raila jets back in the country today, he has promised to keep the government in check with his planned demonstrations starting next week. James Mureki Mwenda, KUTV.
Well, the battle pastor Ezekiel Odero of New Life Church Center will spend his weekend at the Port Police Station until Tuesday, when the Shanzu Law Court Principal Magistrate will deliver on ruling on whether to detain him for 30 days pending completion of investigations on the deaths at his church. Odero was arrested yesterday and his church closed. KUTV's Ann Odida with that story.
The Office of the Directorate of Public Prosecutions filed a miscellaneous criminal application before Shanzu Law Court Principal Magistrate Joe Omido, seeking detention of televangelist Ezekiel Odero for 30 days for investigation team to complete investigations and submit the file to the DPP for review. Ezekiel will be remanded until Tuesday, May 2nd, by virtue of May 1st being a public holiday.
And render a reasoned ruling on the issues before this court, which in my projection I will not be able to do today due to pressure of work. It is unfortunate again that this application comes before me today, which is a Friday, which day, of course, is succeeded by a Saturday, which is not a working day. And it also chances that Monday is also not a working day, as it's Labor Day or May Day. It falls on 1st of May. a public holiday. So in the result, the directions that this court gives is that the ruling in this matter will be rendered on the 2nd of May at 11 in the morning here before this court. And the respondents will, in the intervening period, remain in police custody. We may agree in the way which station that he shall be remanded in. Yes,
Prosecutor Jami Amina said that based on credible intelligence, there are over 100 deaths that occurred in the presence of televangelist Odero between 2022 to 2023, and the potential witnesses are followers or strong believers of the accused. In his sworn affidavit, the lead investigator George Miruki said he is undertaking investigations relating to a serious crime that Odero is jointly and by conspiracy suspected to have committed. Some of the serious crimes being investigated are murder, aiding suicide, abduction, radicalization, genocide, crimes against humanity, child cruelty, fraud and money laundering, and for being accessories before or after the fact. The investigator would want to establish whether the deaths reported at the presence of televangelist Odero Church in Mavueni have a link with dead bodies being exhumed in the 800-acre land in Shakahola or were released to relatives for internment. Odero's arrest comes in the wake of mass deaths on an expansive piece of land allegedly owned by CUT leader Paul Mackenzie, who is also in custody. Mackenzie's controversial teachings have so far claimed 109 lives in Shakahola village. Anodida, KUTV.
The exercise of digging up bodies in Shakahola village has been suspended by the government due to heavy rains being experienced in Shakahola. This is according to Interior Cabinet Secretary Professor Kithure Kindiki, who visited the area for the second time this week, in which more than 100 bodies believed to be followers of controversial Paul Mackenzie have been exhumed. Kindiki says the government has upscaled the search and rescue efforts for persons suspected to be holed up in the thicket in Shakahola, Kilifi County. He has assured that the multi-agency security team is doing the best to save many lives as possible. A public information tracing and a support center has been established to offer assistance and receive inquiries from members of the public. President William Ruto has honored his promise on the increasing the judiciary budget allocation by 3 billion as he had pledged during the campaign period. A cabinet dispatch released yesterday after Ruto chaired a special meeting at State House to consider the inaugural budget of financial year 2023-2024 revealed an increase by 3 billion shillings on the budget allocated to the judiciary. Our very own James Muriki with that numbers.
President William Ruto administration has increased the judiciary budget allocation. The increase of the judiciary's budget comes just a day after Ruto chaired a special cabinet meeting at State House yesterday to consider the administration inaugural budget of financial year 2023-2024. A cabinet dispatch released yesterday read in part, and I quote, "In line with Kenya Kwanza pledge to strengthening judicial independence, the judiciary allocation has been increased from 18.8 billion shillings to 22.9 billion shillings in the next financial year," end of quote. Late last year, President Ruto, during the launch of the State of the Judiciary and the Administration of Justice annual report, promised to increase the allocation of the judiciary by at least 3 billion shillings annually for the next 5 years. In his statement, President Ruto stated that the additional funding was meant to support the recruitment of judges, judicial officers, and critical cadres of judicial staff to increase the human resource complement to at least 80% of the approved establishment. During the campaign period in last year's August presidential election, he pledged to operationalize the judiciary fund in order to empower the court and its officials. Ruto said that the fund shall be used for administrative expenses of the judiciary and such other purposes as may be necessary for the discharge of the functions of the judiciary. James More Kimanda, KUTV.
Right, still on President William Ruto has today presided over the commissioning of the grain bulk handlers storage terminal in Embakasi, Nairobi area. The project is set to facilitate improved cargo handling capacities in the country. The president, who was accompanied by his deputy president Rigathi Gachagua and other leaders, said that the government is also partnering with private sectors to enhance investment in the country.
President William Ruto has commissioned the Grain Bulk Handlers Limited Inland Storage Terminal in Embakasi, Nairobi. The project is expected to enhance the country's productivity and cargo handling capacity, which will in turn support strong economic development.
The establishment of a specialized logistics facility goes a long way in enhancing the country's productivity and competitiveness by increasing cargo handling efficiency, thereby maximizing the capacity of the railway infrastructure to support stronger economic performance.
According to the president, the government is committed to reducing the time taken to move goods from the producers to consumers, as he notes that the railway system is currently performing below its full capacity.
Additionally, I direct the Cabinet Secretaries for National Treasury and Economic Planning and the Cabinet Secretary for Roads and Transport to identify land along the railway to be designated for the development of these hubs throughout the railway transport corridor.
On his part, Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua said the launch is an important milestone in ensuring the country's food security, as he applauded the president for not subsidizing the cost of flour and instead opting to take time to provide a more permanent solution.
Your Excellency, you never went to look for money to subsidize unga. The only input that has brought about this success of bringing down the cost of unga is good thinking and prudent management.
Nairobi Governor Johnson Sakaja, on his part, noted that the cost of living can go down by ensuring efficiency with grain storage and minimizing wastage and spoilage to ensure each shilling buys more.
But we can start to cut costs simply by getting better, more efficient at moving and storing grain. That means less waste and less spoilage.
President Ruto has also said the government has identified partners from the private sector to facilitate more projects under the 5 pillars of the bottom-up transformation plan, saying that the private sector is ideal for development. Yvonne Kemuma, KUTV.
Right, still motors development. President William Ruto on Friday commissioned the tarmacking of 65-kilometer Ongata-Rongai roads in Kajiado County. Ruto says Rongai has a huge potential of being a city, thus the need to deliberately expand, modernize and upgrade its urban road network, beside fixing the sewerage lines to sustainable cater for the growing populations, beside checking traffic congestion in the town. Kadari Chari with that report.
President William Ruto has today afternoon presided over the official launch for the construction of the Ongata-Rongai 65-kilometer roads. According to President Ruto, Rongai has a huge potential of being a city. That is why they are deliberately expanding, modernizing, and upgrading its urban road network, besides fixing the sewerage lines to sustainably cater for the growing population, besides checking traffic congestion in the town. During the launch, President Ruto said he will not allow the opposition to terrorize the country with violence, demonstrations, and chaos.
Kwenda Nairobi katikati, ati kwenda kuharibu mali ya wananchi, ati kwenda kulete fujo. Mimi nataka niwaambie my friends, hiyo haitawezekana. Mimi ndio rais wa Kenya. Na kama mnataka kuendelea, mtajua hamjui. Yes, enough is enough. Haiwezekani tena. Haitawezekana tena. And I want to tell them, wasione ya kwamba tumesema tuongee. Wanaona ya kwamba ati watatuletea mchezo. Mchezo hatutaki.
Ruto at the same time promised Kenyans to expect the prices of unga to drop from 240 shillings to 150 come next week. President Ruto further put Azimio on the spot over the high prices of unga, even as the ODM leader vowed to continue with protests over the high cost of living.
Mimi na serikali yetu tumepanga ile bei ya unga ilikuwa 240. Saa hizi tumeisukuma kutumia akili peke yake, hakuna hata shilingi moja tumeweka. Akili peke yake saa hii imefika 150. Na mimi bado nasukuma. Ukienda hapo utakuta mimi nataka tuteremushe mpaka next week mutaona tena bei zingine mpya.
Upon completion of the projects, these link roads will decongest Magadi Road from Galleria Shopping Center to Rongai and Ngong Road from Karen to Ngong Town, and the road will open up the areas for business and investment, boost security in the area and improve access to markets, schools, hospitals and other facilities. Kaderi Chari reporting for KUTV.
Right, Lieutenant Francis Ogola has officially been promoted to the ranks of General and appointed Chief of Defense Forces by President William Ruto for a 4th term following the retirement of his predecessor, General Robert Kariuki Kibochi, whose term of service has come to an end following a successful 44 years career in the military. General Francis Ogola previously served as the commander of the Air Forces and vice of the Defense Forces before the appointment. Other appointments include the promotion of Brigadier David Kipkemboi to Major General and subsequent appointment as Assistant Chief of the Defense Forces Personnel and Logistics. East Africa Community Regional Forces Commander Jeff Nyaga has stepped down from leading the peacekeeping mission in the Democratic Republic of Congo. In the letter to the East Africa Secretary General, Nyaga cited constant threat to his life and deliberate effort by the DRC government to sabotage the work of the regional forces. He says that in January this year, foreign mercenaries track his activities using monitoring devices, drone spies, and residents while in his home maligned through misinformation in the media. Nyaga has also blamed DRC government for failing to facilitate operations at the ECRF headquarters. Right, we take our first break here on KUTV Primetime News. Of course, plenty more to follow after a short break, including our big interview today.
What's up, fashionistas? Looking for a show that brings you the latest in the world of fashion, glamour, creativity, and style? Fashion Diaries got you sorted as we explore street fashion, modeling, runways, red carpet events, and so much more.
Catch me, Ashley at Sachi, as we unlock the greatest fashion events. Keep it locked.
Are you an aspiring media practitioner, a graduate, or you just want to advance your skills in television production? Then welcome to Kenyatta University, where education meets innovation. KUTV, the premier university television station in Kenya, is now offering short courses in TV studio, field technical operations, and video editing. Through these courses, you will acquire hands-on skills on camera operations, media production, lighting techniques, audio-visual editing, and sound and visual control, and how to operate key equipment in modern TV control room. Enroll today at KUTV and discover your full potential in cutting-edge TV broadcasting. Graduates of these courses will receive professional certificates. For more information, visit our offices at KUTV studios or call us on 020-870-4252 or 020-870-4255 or SMS us on 0739-110-544. KUTV, a new experience.
Lola ni programu inayokupa fursa ya kutizama video zozote pindi tu unapokuwa na nafasi. Hadithi za kukupa motisha, drama, maisha ya vyuo vikuu, teknolojia, masuala ya jamii, kuzuru maeneo tofauti, spoti, burudani na zaidi. Pata programu ya Lola sasa kwenye rununu yako kwa yote unayohitaji.
We are all seeing the impacts of climate change. In Kenya, for example, the frequency of the floods is becoming more and worse. The amount of people and livestock we are losing.
The level we need to go is a level where the normal mwananchi and also the government stakeholders can uptake these solutions.
Those small acts multiplied by millions of us will help make a difference in the world at the end of the day.
It's just a slight behavior change that we need, and you'll find that it serves us a bit more than you put in. And that's the goal. We want to live a better world than we found, because at the rate we are going, it's dire.
We will secure the planet for future generations.
Right, welcome back and thank you for tuning in. This is where we pick this discussion of malaria, and I'm joined live by, of course, our guest who will be joining us live via Zoom. That is Cleo Mtai, who is actually joining us live. Well, as the world continues to put its best foot forward in eradicating malaria, here in Kenya, interventions has been put in place by the Ministry of Health to eliminate malaria, including the issuance of mosquito nets in mass net campaign. But are you aware of the link between malaria and sickle cell anemia? Well, Mtua, Cleophas Mutu, of course, Doctor, thank you so much for joining us here. Well, we have a very important discussion, and of course, I hope you're doing quite well.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. I'm glad to be with you, and yeah, I'm doing well. Thank you very much.
All right. Let me begin by, giving out, rather reading out some statistics from World Health Organization that actually paints a grim picture of this as far as the war between malaria is concerned? Well, statistics puts it that 247 million people, of course, suffer from malaria in 2021. That is an increase of about 2 million from the previous year 2020. Well, 619,000 deaths have been reported, where in areas like mostly in sub-Saharan Africa, and most deaths are recorded in children. Of course, this begs the question, well, why is malaria still common in sub-Saharan Africa?
Yeah, thank you for that question. And you have rightly said that malaria is still an issue in sub-Saharan Africa, where our country, Kenya, is. And actually, it's important to note that it's not just sub-Saharan Africa. We have to bring it home, and where we know that, like in 2021, in our country, we had about 3.4 million people affected by malaria. And out of those 3.4 million people, we had 12,000 deaths from malaria. And malaria is still common in sub-Saharan Africa, majorly because it's the climate that funds the spread of malaria through the parasite, which is usually spread by the mosquito. And so, yes, it's still common in sub-Saharan Africa, majorly because of the climatic changes that we have, and also, of course, because we are still instituting measures to control the spread of malaria, which we are yet to cover the areas that we are supposed to cover. And that would explain why we still have malaria in the sub-Saharan Africa.
All right. Well, when you look at the measures, of course, that has been put in place, especially here in the country, as far as the war to eradicate malaria is concerned, of course, there is some gains that have been made, at least 50% prevalence of this. That is a gain, if you ask me. But why is the war, or rather, will the war against malaria ever be won, in your own opinion?
Yeah, I mean, yes, we are hopeful as doctors and the clinical community that yes, the war against malaria will be won, but it has to be a multi-agency, combat for this malaria. One, the way to control malaria is to use, the first thing that we are doing is using the mosquito nets which are treated. And these mosquito nets which are treated should be distributed. Like you rightly said, yes, there has been an improvement in the uptake of treated mosquito nets, especially in the rural areas. And this is what we really need to encourage, that we continue distributing them in our rural areas, especially the areas that are prone to malaria, so that we can be able to control the spread of malaria. We have also the treatment of malaria in especially the prone groups of people, the pregnant women and under 5s, where I am a pediatrician. So we encourage that these cases are picked early and treated early, so that we can combat this menace of malaria. And of course, it's important to also, there are other methods of controlling malaria using the barrier methods, the creams, using the other things like the insecticides. And also remember that from 2019, the government rolled out the malaria vaccines in the malaria endemic zones, which also has significantly helped to reduce the spread of malaria and also reduce the severity of the disease, and hence reducing the burden of malaria.
All right. When you talk about the malaria, the rollout vaccine, well, there is at least 2 regions, that is Western and of course Nyanza. But I want to draw your attention to mostly Western, and to be precise, in area like, let's say, Sirisia, where it recorded 46%, that is positivity rate as far as malaria is concerned. Then we have Bumula, 41. When you talk about the uptake of vaccine as far as malaria is concerned, does this point to maybe lack of laxity as far as the uptake of vaccine is concerned in these 2 regions that I've just mentioned?
Well, it's important to note that the malaria vaccine has several effects when it's given to a community. The first thing is to prevent the infection rate and reduce the infection rate. But remember, the other aspect of the malaria vaccine is that it reduces the severity of the disease. So having a high prevalence of malaria in those areas does not necessarily mean that there's no uptake. We also have to look at the seriousness. When I say severity, I mean how many. Malaria is divided into two. There is complicated malaria and there's uncomplicated malaria. So we have to look at those particular areas and ask ourselves, are we having more cases of complicated malaria, or are we having more cases of less of uncomplicated malaria? Because the aim of the malaria vaccine is also to reduce the cases where the malaria becomes complicated, and hence reducing the number of deaths that occur from malaria infection.
All right. Well, when you talk about this, the uptake, and you give us a very detailed analysis of complicated and of course the other malaria. Now, I want us to switch attention to our main focus of discussion today, which is the link between malaria and of course sickle cell anemia. In your own terms, probably, Doc, if you can, help us with this question, like what is the relationship between malaria and sickle cell anemia?
Well, first of all, it's good to understand what is sickle cell anemia. Where sickle cell anemia is a condition where it's a condition that is inherited, where someone's hemoglobin is more likely to, red blood cells are more likely to break down in particular conditions just because of the way the hemoglobin is, because of the way it's inherited, yeah? And also, it's also good to understand how malaria causes disease, the disease-causing mechanism of malaria itself. Malaria parasite affects majorly the red blood cells as well, and causes the breakage of these red blood cells, leading to the symptoms that we see, the fever in the hemoglobin. And so here you're having two diseases that are affecting the same part of the body, the red blood cell. The red blood cell is the part of the blood that transports our oxygen. When you say someone has low blood, usually we mean that they have less hemoglobin, and that hemoglobin component is usually carried in the red blood cell. So the thing about the malaria is that if someone who has sickle cell disease, meaning that someone who has sickle cell disease is more likely to have breakage of their red blood cells just because of the way their red blood cells are, if that person also gets malaria, and that malaria is likely to break those red blood cells more. So they are more likely to have a more complicated condition. They are likely to get more sick. They are likely to get a more drop in their blood level. They are likely to get a more symptoms. And I think it's important for us to also discuss the symptoms of, for example, malaria. Malaria usually gives you symptoms like fever. It gives you symptoms like low blood. It gives you symptoms like having yellowness of the eyes, just because when you break the red blood cells, you get yellowness of the eyes. So if someone who has now this more likely to, if there are someone that their red blood cells are more likely to break, if they get malaria, they are likely to have a more serious disease, and they are more likely to get complications of malaria, and hence they are more likely to die from the infection. And hence they talk about trying to prevent these people who have sickle cell disease from getting the infection of malaria. Yeah, and that's why we ensure that people who have a sickle cell disease are supposed to be on some medicine that prevents them from getting a malaria infection. I don't know that made sense. It's a lot of medicine.
Well, actually, that brings me to another question that is, if you ask me, quite a bit confusing. Why are some people with let's say hemoglobin more resistant to malarias than those that without? I'm talking about high.
Sorry?
All right, let me rephrase my question. When we're talking about the relationship between, of course, malaria and sickle cell anemia, and there is some statistics that was done that indicate that some people who have hemoglobin, of course, are more resistant to malaria than others without.
Oh yeah, the research shows that the people who have a single copy, you see for sickle cell disease, we talk about carriers and we talk about the people who have the disease itself. And sorry, I think you have disappeared. Yeah, so for those people who are carriers or have a single copy of the gene for sickle cell, those ones have been shown to be a bit protected from malaria. Okay, so that's what research has shown. But then for those people who have the sickle cell disease itself, have been shown to be more, they are more likely to die from the disease, like I've explained earlier on. So they are more likely to die when they get malaria than those people who have a single copy of the sickle cell trait. So that those people who are carriers or who have a single copy of the hemoglobin S are a bit protected according to research from severity of malaria. But then remember, for those who are sickle cell disease sufferers themselves, then when they get the malaria itself, then they are more likely to have more severe symptoms because of the factors that we had explained earlier on.
All right. Well, Doc, there is still another very disturbing factor that was established, and it's concerned. Let's say children under the age of 5 years, especially here in Kenya, who lives in Western Kenya. It said that those with sickle cells anemia are prone, of course, to malaria, especially those under the age of 5 years living in Western Kenya. What is happening, Doc?
Yeah, the thing is all children under 5 years are prone to malaria, and also other special groups like the pregnant women. The fact that their children are living in Western Kenya, they are more prone to malaria, because you see malaria is also distributed a bit geographically in our country. We have areas of high malaria endemic zone areas, especially the western regions, including the lake regions and other areas like the coastal regions. So those children who are in those areas are more likely, of course, to suffer from malaria infections, and again more severe disease if a child is under 5 years and they have sickle cell disease. Imagine a child who has sickle cell disease has a hemoglobin of like 8. Then they get malaria, and the malaria now breaks down their red blood cells, and the hemoglobin drops further. So that is really the thing, that the connection between this malaria, the climate, and the regional distribution, and also the age, and of course the sickle cell factor coming in.
All right. Well, those in this, red zone areas, shouldn't more attention be focused on those areas? Because area like Western Kenya, you talk about Nyanza and even coast. This is where I think maybe more effort and attention should be, diverted there, so that we can try to reduce the number of cases. So, as a person, of course, who personally deals with, such kind of issues, and especially on children, what is the factors on the ground? What is happening?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The focus should be, and actually it is, on those areas, and that's why we have the vaccines being targeted to those areas from 2019, and that we've seen from our data that yes, there's a reduction in severity of malaria in those areas, and all the other things that need to be focused to those areas where we have capacity building for health workers to be able to diagnosis and early treatment for those children who have malaria, and we should encourage an uptake of these vaccines, so for all children under 5 years, and also we are promoting the treatment of pregnant women with the medication, so that this does not affect the children, because remember also that malaria causes premature deliveries. It causes delivery of children who what we call small for gestational age, just saying that you are a bit smaller than you are supposed to be when you are being born, and also this affects the growth of the children after. So it should be we should use all these approaches to reduce the infection, the severity, the transmission, and also we treat those cases that are being diagnosed early so that we can prevent the malaria-related deaths in the children under 5 years of age, especially in those areas that are affected mostly by the malaria.
All right, Doc. Thank you so much, of course, for making time to give us your very rich and in-depth analysis of malaria and what is basically happening as far as the fight against malaria is concerned. It was a pleasure to have you.
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Now, moving on, the National Council of Persons Living with Disability came together at Embakasi area in Nairobi to participate in food donation exercise as well as to donate basic equipment needed by the persons living with disability in the area. This was to ensure that the PWD's rights are implemented as stated in the Kenyan Constitution and finding ways to ensure equity for all.
Organizations providing assistance for people living with disabilities in the country have complained of some challenges that people living with disabilities are going through in the efforts to fight the difficult situation of increase of cost of living. These were clearly manifested at the special Happy Moment event at Embakasi East. According to the director of Dolphin Special Program, Peter Seleni, their rights as people with disabilities are not considered and they want the government to find ways to address their needs.
Serikali barabara zimeharibika, county government barabara zimeharibika huku mtaa. Walemavu wetu wanateseka wakati huu. Hata mkutano kama hiyo hawajakuja wengi kwa sababu kumenyesha, watu kutoka kule ndani ni shida. Ni shida. Kwa hivyo tafadhali county, serikali tengenezeni, na wale watu wanajenga hizi nyumba kubwa kubwa kama hizi. Tunataka kuona hizi nyumba zikiwa na ramu. Kama sivyo tupewe nguvu ya kufunga hizi nyumba.
Even in their own efforts to fight the challenges at the county level, there are other challenges they say the national government should intervene, including catering for the large percentage of disabled people whose level of education is low, unemployment, poverty, increase of large numbers of people living with disabilities following the increase of accidents and so on.
Prince Machage, na huyu anaitwa Nixon Bosire, ama caregiver to Nixon Bosire. Nixon has autism, inakuwa changamoto sana, especially kwa madawa. Anasoma, ako shule, pia school fees inahitajika, lakini huwa saa zingine inakuwa ni ngumu. Na kwa niaba ya wale wote walemavu, kuna walemavu wengi wako nyumbani lakini wanaficha watoto wao.
Challenges yenye caregivers ama familia wenye wana raise watoto walemavu wanapitia magumu na wanapitia makali. Tumerealize pia pande nyingine hao watoto wanashinda wakiwekwa kwa nyumba. Hii wakati hii msimu wamefunga shule, unapata watoto hata wakupata nafasi hata kutoka nje tembea na wenzake ama apate kumingle na wenzake. Amefungiwa kabisa.
The problem of injustice to the disabled has been discussed and caused a huge debate among them, mentioning that most of the people who live with disabilities are used as a source of income by some individuals who benefit themselves.
Ni Wakenya bili wachukuliwe, kila mtu arudishe kwao. Huku Kenya hakuna society ya walemavu, hata huko kwao kuna place for disability. Wanakuja kutuvinya na sisi kidogo ile tuko nayo. Sasa wanachukua na hata hatuna. What is that? So ni vizuri waangaliwe kwa vitambulisho. Sababu wale wako hapa wote wamekomaa. Na wengine still si walemavu na si wa Kenya.
The National Council of People Living with Disabilities in the country, however, have been encouraged to ensure that they fulfill their promised responsibility to ensure that they promote and protect equal opportunities and recognition of the rights of people with disabilities. As persons living with disabilities continue to face their challenges, they're now asking the county and national government to consider them in job opportunities in the county and national level, as well as ensuring the laws protecting their rights are well implemented. Salma Swaleh, KUTV.
Amazing story over there. Over 30 dairy and pig farmers in Embu County are set to benefit from affordable biogas installation by foreign investor in a move aimed at reducing cost of cooking using charcoal and firewood, as well as conserve the environment. The company says it only requires each farmers to have at least 2 cows or pigs producing 2 to 3 buckets of dung.
Embu farmers are being encouraged to embrace the use of biogas in order to conserve the environment as well as to ensure a reduction on the cost of cooking in the wake of the high cost of living. An Israel farm known as the New Markets Home Biogas Global that has been operating in the counties of Kiambu, Meru, Nyeri and Murang'a has extended its operations to Embu. The company's senior vice president Muli Lahav says every farmer who has at least 2 cows or pig can easily be able to benefit from this clean energy that will also go a long way in saving trees that have predominantly been the main source of cooking energy.
Wakati tunalisha ng'ombe alafu inakuona ukibebana na mkuliangazi kuenda kuziwa. Thank you so much. Na unalipa mpaka mtu wa mbunda. Hiyo ng'ombe kama mimi I'm in the livestock and I.
According to Mr. Lahav, the biogas, the methane gas produced can cook for at least 5 hours a day, and the residue slurry can be used in place of fertilizer in the farm to improve soil fertility and crop yields.
The systems can treat 2, 3, 4 buckets of cow dung every day in a way that it breaks it down in an anaerobic process. And out of that process, there are 2 amazing outputs that comes out. One of them is methane gas, biogas, that people can cook on their stoves about 4 to 5 hours a day. And the second output is rich nutrient that comes pushed out of the system, around 100 liters a day, that can be used and applied on the cash crops, on the cow fodders, in a way that it's improved the harvest and the yield, and of course the fertility of the soil.
In Embu, we have more than 20,000 small-scale dairy farmers, and probably more than 10,000 pig farmers. Right now, we understand that the number of small farmers with biogas system is less than 1%, and more than 80% of them are actually using firewood and charcoal and clean cooking.
Farmer George Kivuti says the biogas technology has helped him save a lot since it is cost-effective compared to cooking with firewood, and that he has been using the biogas slurry produced by the biogas system on his coffee and maize farm, leading to increased soil fertility and bumper harvest. Biogas has proven to be effective for electricity production on sewage works, cooking as well as a conservation agent to environment. Salma Swaleh, KUTV.
Right, it's time to take yet another short break here on KUTV Primetime News. Remember, we welcome your short comments and, of course, your thoughts on our broadcasts. The hashtag you use always is Primetime News. Of course, we take this short break. When we come back, plenty more to follow, including sporty news.
We are all seeing the impacts of climate change. In Kenya, for example, the frequency of the floods is becoming more and worse. The amount of people and livestock we are losing.
The level we need to go is a level where the normal mwananchi and also the government stakeholders can uptake these solutions.
Those small acts multiplied by millions of us will help make a difference in the world at the end of the day.
It's just a slight behavior change that we need, and you'll find that it serves us a bit more than you put in. And that's the goal. We want to live a better world than we found, because at the rate we are going, it's dire.
We will secure the planet for future generations.
And our research involves using advances in plant sciences to try and find solutions for constraints of food and agricultural productivity in sub-Saharan Africa.
The idea here is farmers maybe would spray this on their farms just before planting to induce germination of striga seeds, but because the host is not there, it means that these seeds are going to die at the end of the day.
Right, welcome back. Now it's time for sporty action. It was a match day for amid heavy rains in Nova International School in Eldoret, Uasin Gishu County today in the National Secondary School Term 1 games with several matches lined up. In the basketball girls semi-finals, Butere Girls High School demolished Our Lady of Mercy 66-36 to set up final showdown against Kaya Tui, who beat Loreto Girls High School 49-46. In the boys handball semi-finals, Boni High School beat Manyata 19-17 to set up a final clash against Hospital Hills, who thrashed Musinga Boys 26-14. The final will be played tomorrow. Now to some English football action. Match day 33 in the English Premier League continue when Tottenham Hotspurs welcomed Manchester United at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium as the battle for top 4 heat up. Spurs, who were demolished 6-1 by Newcastle last weekend, fought back from 2 goals down to clinch a 2-2 draw against United thanks to Son Heung-min and Pedro Porto. Ten Hag's United got a 2-0 advantage when Jadon Sancho and Marcus Rashford netted in the first half in